Good evening, everyone. I'm your storyteller, and tonight I'll take you into online dates that turn into pure horror. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments where and when you're watching. Now, prepare yourself for the fear that lies ahead. Episode 1: The Ashen Flames in the Woods Behind the House. I still remember the smell of smoke, the damp smoke of rotten wood burning, mixed with the resin of pine that clung to my tongue. It was acrid, pungent, wrapping around my throat even when I no longer breathed. My name is Ethan Miller. That year, I was 21, just on summer break after a long year at university. My parents had a small house in the suburbs of Oregon, with a vast forest stretching behind it. Since childhood, I had grown up with the sound of the wind whistling through the pine branches, the crackle of dry leaves breaking under my shoes. The forest was my playground, my shelter, and, also, the place where my body was buried. That night I had no special plans. It was just a sweltering morning. I looked out the window, saw streaks of sunlight cutting through the leaves, and a thought flashed in my head. Tonight, I will sleep in the forest. I packed a few things: a small tent, a lighter, a pocket knife, some chocolate bars, and a bag of marshmallows. Enough to make a peaceful night. I said casually to my parents, "I'm going into the woods behind, pitching a tent to sleep overnight." My mother just smiled. "Remember to bring a thick jacket, the night is cold." I left home at 4 in the afternoon. The sun was still high, the forest drenched in golden light, every bush glowing like fire. I walked for about an hour, chose a clearing wide enough to pitch a tent. There, the sky opened up above, the ground was covered with rotting leaves. I chopped a few dry branches, lit a fire. The crackle of burning wood echoed in the stillness. The smoke clung to my clothes, my hair, my skin. I sat watching the flickering flames, listening to the wind thread through the trees. That feeling, I thought I would never forget, and indeed I never did, because that was the last night I lived. When the sun dipped lower, the forest began to change. Darkness didn't fall all at once. It seeped in bit by bit, weaving together like strips of black silk. Sounds changed too. The birds of the afternoon fell silent, replaced by the shrill calls of insects. Amid that murky backdrop, another sound crept in, a voice. A man's voice, low and hoarse, as if speaking to himself. I heard it from somewhere on the other side of the forest. Not near, but clear enough that I could catch the broken rhythm of incomplete words, like a chant shredded by the wind. I strained my ears. At first, I thought maybe someone happened to pass by, but I knew the woods behind my house well. No trails, no tourists. To enter here, you had to mean it. And if there was someone, why didn't they carry a light, make louder noises? Only that whisper, persistent, circling. I coughed lightly, then called out, "Hello? Is anyone out there?" The sound cut off immediately. The forest sank into a thick silence, so dense I could hear my heartbeat pounding inside my chest. A cold gust swept through, carrying the smell of damp soil, so strong my tongue tasted salty. I sat still for a few seconds, then stood up, dimmed the fire, packed my things. Only one thought in my head: not here. I shouldn't stay here tonight. I dragged my tent, moved deeper into the denser part of the forest. The sky darkened completely, the last light fading behind the branches, leaving only a deep purple sky. I hastily set up a new tent. The ground was damper here, the smell of mold rising from rotten roots. I lit another fire, clinging to the faint yellow glow for safety. After a while, I took out marshmallows, stuck them on a stick, roasted them over the fire. The sugar charred, its sweet sharpness mixing with smoke, filling my mouth. I swallowed slowly, trying to push away the fear. Everything seemed to settle, but then the crunch of dry leaves behind me. Crack. Just a small sound, but in the silence of the forest night it echoed like thunder. I spun around, eyes straining into the pitch black behind the trees. Nothing. I called out again, "Is someone there?" This time, there was an answer. A figure stepped out of the night into the firelight. He smiled, raised both hands toward the warmth. "Didn't mean to scare you," he said, voice calm. The fire lit his face, gaunt with a strained smile, hollow eyes. I smelled something drifting on the wind, not the forest, not the scent of a traveler, but a metallic stench like old, dried blood. I swallowed hard, my throat dry, my tongue stiff. I stammered, "You must be mistaken, this is my camp." He tilted his head, still smiling, answered briefly, "No." Just one word, short, freezing. The flames flickered across his eyes. They reflected nothing. No light shone within them, only a solid black abyss. And as I looked longer, I realized I was not facing just one man. Someone else was there too, standing somewhere in the shadows, watching. He sat down by the fire as if he had known me before. No asking permission, no searching glance. His thin hands spread out, warming over the red flames. Veins bulged under his skin, trembling in the unsteady glow. I edged back, my spine hitting the tent pole. The cold spread through my bones, not from the forest wind, but from a foreboding. I should not be here with him. "Do you live near here?" I asked, forcing calm. Without looking at me, he answered curtly, "No. I came here for you." I froze. The fire crackled, cutting across my frantic heartbeat. I heard my own ragged breath, smoke filling my lungs heavy as mud. A noise came from behind, snap, as if someone stepped on a dry branch. He didn't flinch, didn't turn. Instead, the corner of his mouth curled, a smile sharp as a blade. I turned, staring into the dark, and I saw another figure. The face unclear, only a tall shape, standing still like a post. Not moving, not a sound, but I knew it was watching me. The air thickened. I heard the rush of blood in my ears, my teeth chattering. I wanted to stand, but my legs were nailed to the ground. The man by the fire whispered, his voice hoarse, "We've been watching you since the sun went down." The fire that blazed suddenly dimmed, as if an invisible hand squeezed it. Darkness spread, swallowing the light. Panic drove me to my feet. I grabbed the pocket knife in my bag. The blade glinted but shook violently in my hand. He lifted his head, empty eyes drilling into me. "You think that will save you?" Behind me, footsteps began, heavy, dragging, each step pounding against my chest. Leaves crushed underfoot, a wheezing breath closer, closer. I screamed, lunged into the dark, running blindly. Branches lashed my face, pine sap clung to my hands. The cold pierced my skin, the smell of damp rot choking my nose. Footsteps chased, faster, nearer. I knew these woods. I grew up on every trail. But tonight, everything changed. Trees crowded closer. Paths vanished. I slipped, fell into the bed of leaves, the foul stench of wet soil flooding my mouth. I crawled up, sharp twigs clawing my palms, bleeding. Behind me, his voice rang out, "Don't run, Ethan. We've already chosen you." My heart roared. I rushed toward the faint silver of moonlight filtering through the trees. But the more I ran, the thicker the dark grew. The forest tightened, trapping me. A hand clamped down on my shoulder from behind, ice cold, hard as steel. I turned, only to see his eyes. No longer human pupils, but two black voids reflecting the dying fire. My scream broke in my throat, spilling into a rasp. The stench of blood filled my nose, salt flooding my mouth. I thrashed, but my body was dragged back, swallowed by night. The campfire where I had pitched my tent snuffed out. The forest drowned in silence. Only the wind howled through the trees, carrying a chilling whisper. Your flame is out. Now you belong to us. I no longer remember exactly how the final moment of my life passed, only that after the icy grip on my shoulder, everything sank into suffocating black. I no longer heard insects, no longer smelled wood smoke, no longer felt earth beneath me, only a hollow void swallowing me whole. When I opened my eyes again, I was still in the forest, but different. No campfire, no tent, no footsteps chasing. Only me, standing in the clearing, trembling, staring at the very spot where I sat last night. On the ground still lingered a blackened circle of ash, where the fire had died, and beside it, footprints pressed deep in the soil, much larger than mine. The prints led straight to where I stood, then vanished. I bent down, touched the charred earth. Ice cold, no warmth left. When my finger touched it, the ash crumbled, lifting into a thin veil of smoke. And within that smoke, I saw his face, the crooked smile, the pitch-black eyes staring unblinking at me. I understood. I was dead. Where my body was, I didn't know. Maybe buried beneath layers of leaves, maybe dragged deeper into the forest. But my soul was bound here, to this circle of dying fire. Every gust of wind carried their whispers, every drop of dew their familiar stench of blood. Every night I heard them whisper, echoing from the depths of the woods, "Sit down. Warm your hands by the fire. We have another now." I saw others too, shadowy figures around the circle, thin, silent. One in a tattered coat, a child with hair covering half its face, a woman with bloodstains still on her neck. They were like me, souls trapped, devoured by the forest. I tried calling out to those who passed by. Sometimes campers came close. They lit fires, laughed, roasted meat, toasted marshmallows. And I stood there, right behind them, whispering softly. Some turned, shivered, eyes uneasy. They felt me, but never saw me. I tried screaming, begging, but only the wind howled in reply. This forest doesn't let anyone go. Once the campfire dies, the fire inside your chest dies too. Now I understand. Humans don't need to be demons to bring horror. It was those two men, flesh and blood with their cruel intent, who erased me from the world. Ghosts only watch from outside. It is people who bury souls alive. If one night you wander into the forest, light a fire beneath the pines, and suddenly hear footsteps crunching behind you, please don't call out. Because perhaps the one who answers isn't a ghost, but a man. And when your fire goes out, I will stand right behind you to tell you the rest of the story. Episode 2. The Abandoned Watchtower on the Mountain. My name is Daniel Ross. I once thought I loved solitude. I once believed that only on the mountain, deep in the forest, far from humanity, could I truly be myself. But I was wrong. The very place I sought for peace became my grave. I still remember the pungent scent of pine resin as I stepped along the worn trail. Wild grass soaked with dew brushing against my pants. That day, the peak of Montana was veiled under a gray mist, clouds lazily coiling around. There, halfway up the sky, stood a lonely wooden tower, like a shadow from another century left behind. I had been climbing for more than 5 hours, shoulders weighed down by my backpack, throat parched, mouth bitter with the metallic tang of salty sweat. Every step felt watched, though the only sounds were my boots grinding on gravel and the hoarse cries of distant crows. At last, the tower came into view, not towering like modern fire lookouts, but precariously perched on just over 10 wooden steps. a bare shack clinging to the mountainside. The wood was old, weathered gray, and damp with the musty smell of rot. I placed my hand on the stair railing, feeling the rough, cold grain. Blackened marks scarred the surface like traces of an old burn. A shiver ran through me, yet I climbed. Each step groaned, as if protesting my presence. Inside, the tower was utterly empty. Only the mottled floorboards remained, with a few beams creaking as the wind whipped through. From here I could see the vast valley, the endless stretch of forest. The outside world seemed to vanish, leaving only me and the void. The first night, I lay on a thin mat spread over the floor, listening to the wind howling around me. The damp scent of rotting wood, the dry dust of long years filled the air, making me feel as though I was breathing in the breath of those who had stayed here before. And then, there were footsteps. They echoed distinctly on the wooden stairs outside, thud, thud, slow, deliberate, as if someone were testing each step. I shot upright, heart pounding, cold sweat soaking my back. The door had no lock, just a crude wooden slab. I held my breath. A man's silhouette appeared in the doorway. He wasn't startled to see me. Instead, he smiled, as if he had known I was here all along. Beautiful, isn't it, this place? I like staying a few nights, too. His voice was hoarse, drawn out, each word coated in moss. His hair was long, blonde, greasy, hanging to his shoulders. His clothes were smeared with dirt. I saw no backpack, no water bottle, nothing that suggested he had hiked here. I forced a smile, my throat dry, the metallic taste of worry rising. I rented this place. I'll be here for 3 nights. Maybe you should find somewhere else. His grin widened, revealing yellowed teeth. His breath reeked of something burnt, like scorched metal laced with ash. He whispered, "You think you're alone here?" The wind, outside, slammed against the wooden walls, rattling the door, and faintly I heard something, not wind. A giggle. Thin, fragile, seeping through the cracks. My heart skipped. Maybe he was right. He stood framed in the doorway, half his body veiled in cold moonlight. I stepped back, sweaty palms clutching the folding knife in my pocket. He made no move to rush me, no threat. He only stared, his pale blue eyes clouded like a fog-covered lake. They didn't search me, didn't examine me, but seemed to pierce straight through, staring at some darkness behind me. "Don't worry," he said evenly, as if soothing a child. "I just came to take a look." Then he turned, stepping down the stairs. The wood creaked loud in the thick air. But when I pressed my face to the window, there was no one below. He had vanished, like he had never existed. I stayed awake all night, the musty wood choking my nose, my mouth dry with swallowed fear. Every gust of wind made my heart leap. By dawn, I staggered down the tower. There, nailed to the railing at the bottom, was a neatly folded scrap of paper pinned with a rusty nail. One crude word scrawled across it, "Sorry." Beside it, a crooked smile. I froze. That meant he had returned while I slept. He had stood right here, hammered the nail, left his note, and I never knew. That day, I tried to calm myself by walking the mountainside. Sunlight poured down, the forest lush, birds chattering. The fresh pine resin made the air breathable, but in every cluster of trees I felt eyes on me. Each time I turned, I caught a pale flicker darting into the underbrush, then gone. The second night I resolved to stay awake longer. I hung a small battery lantern on the wall, letting its light spill across the empty room. The silence of the tower only made my heart race. Near midnight, I descended the stairs to relieve myself at the forest edge. Just as I neared the trees, the lantern in my hand cast its beam and caught movement. A figure leaned slightly, slipping into the dark. I froze, eyes wide, but there was nothing left. I bolted back into the tower, heart hammering, shirt clinging with sweat. Inside, I sat pressed against the window, eyes locked on the stairs below. The night wind whistled cold, seeping through cracks, intensifying the musty stench. The room was barely a few meters wide, yet I felt like I was sitting in a glass cage, exposed. If he was out there in the dark, he could see me perfectly. Hours passed. My eyes ached, my palms clenched around the knife. Then I saw him, the blond man. He stood at the base of the stairs, head tilted up, motionless. Lantern light spilled just enough to half reveal his face. His mouth wasn't smiling, wasn't speaking, just slightly open, whispering something I couldn't hear. I froze, unblinking. Time dragged endlessly. At least 2 minutes passed. He never moved. Then, slowly, he stepped backward. One step, another, until the darkness swallowed him. No sound. No trace. I realized he hadn't left. He was waiting. I never left the tower that night. I knew if I stepped down, I would never return. But staying meant bearing myself to him. I packed my things in a frenzy, heart thundering, throat choked with the metallic tang of fear. Outside, the wind shrieked like a whistle, shaking the 4 walls as if they would collapse. Then the door shuddered. A knock. Someone had laid a hand on it. I raised the knife, pointing it at the thin wood. My ragged breathing echoed, counting the space between us. Daniel. The voice hissed through the crack, stretched, sliding into my ear like a cold blade. I screamed, "Go away, I have a knife, I've called the police." A faint laugh answered. Not loud, but a whispering chuckle like wind through bamboo. It wasn't just one, there were many voices, many breaths, many laughs overlapping, circling. I lunged to the window. Below, not just him, the blond man, but many others. They stood in a ring, faces lifted, silent. I couldn't make out features, only eyes glowing like dying embers. The door burst open. I couldn't run. A freezing hand clamped my throat, squeezing. I screamed, dropped the knife. The stench of rotting wood, rusty iron, damp flesh smothered me. It was the stench of death filling my lungs. I thrashed, but the grip tightened. The world spun, then darkness. When I opened my eyes, I was still in the tower, but my body was gone. I looked down at the floorboards, blood stained deep red, soaking into the wood. No one cleaned it. No one found me. My soul is trapped here. Every night the wind howls, carrying laughter through the dark. Every night I hear footsteps on the stairs stopping at the door, but it never opens again. I know now. I am only one among many spirits imprisoned in this tower. The figures at its base, I've joined their ranks. We are neither fully human nor truly ghosts. We are monuments to cruelty. And I realized one thing. What killed me wasn't a ghost. It wasn't a curse. It was a man. The kind who seeks seclusion, severs all ties, to do what he knows will never be discovered. Now, anyone who rents this tower, who steps into the silent woods, who lays their mat on the wooden floor, I stand behind them. I try to whisper a warning, but my voice dissolves into the wind, unheard. They only shiver, thinking it's the night breeze. If one day you climb those rotting wooden steps, hearing the creak beneath your feet, remember, it may not just be the wood, it may be his footsteps. And when you drift to sleep, I will be sitting by the window, waiting until you realize, here, fire never burns bright, and man is far more terrifying than any ghost. Episode 3, The Black Pickup Truck. My name is Mark Jensen. I once dreamed of a grand journey, driving from Seattle all the way up to Alaska, across the vast Canadian forests. I wanted freedom, wanted to capture photos of mountain sunrises, wanted to watch the moonlight reflect on frozen lakes. I had it all. An SUV converted into a place to sleep, a backpack full of tools, a few crates of canned food. But what I lacked was survival to return and tell the tale. Now, only my soul wanders along the endless road, telling this story to you. On the first day of the journey, I drove 8 straight hours. The asphalt stretched endlessly, flanked by dense pine forests. The pungent scent of fresh pine seeped into the car through the window cracks, mixing with the smell of hot vinyl seats baking under the sun. I turned on the radio, but the signal faltered, leaving only static mixed with warped fragments of voices like whispers from somewhere far away. When the sun set, I turned into a vacant clearing to rest. No signs, no people, only tall trees standing still like black pillars. I pulled the curtains over the windows, lay down in the car, and listened to the wind whistling through the leaves. The night seemed peaceful, until the next morning. As I stepped out of the car to stretch, I spotted a small trail leading deeper into the woods. Curiosity pulled me along, my shoes crunching on dry leaves. Within minutes, I stumbled upon an abandoned campsite. Torn tents, scattered sleeping bags, food ripped open. Everything looked clawed apart and left behind in panic. The stench of rotting food mingled with damp soil hit me, making me gag. A bad feeling rushed over me. I turned back quickly, and when I returned, my car was no longer alone. A massive, black pickup truck, its windows tinted dark, was parked right beside it. No one outside, no sound inside. Just a hulking block of black metal, silent like a predator lying in wait. I forced myself to stay calm, opened my car door, and slipped inside. The familiar smell of leather seats mixed with cold steel made my throat tighten. I started the engine, the steering wheel trembling faintly in my grip. The pickup remained still, but I could feel eyes behind that dark glass, following my every move. I pressed the gas, pulling out of the clearing. My heart pounded as if a hand was squeezing my chest. 3 hours later, when I stopped to refuel at the only station along the deserted road, the black pickup appeared again. It parked directly opposite, but no one got out. The wind howled, carrying the sharp sting of gasoline. In the silence, only the fuel pump's clicks, ch-ch, and the thundering of my heartbeat filled my ears. I knew then, this was no coincidence. I was being followed. I left the station the moment my tank was full, not daring to linger another second. Behind me, the black pickup stayed still. In the rearview mirror, its pitch-dark windows swallowed everything, like unblinking eyes. The road stretched endlessly, forests pressing in from both sides. The sun sank quickly, its fading light bleeding into purples and blues. When darkness fell completely, the woods became a silent black wall. My headlights carved only a short beam, beyond which was thick, suffocating night. I pushed on for hours, desperate to widen the distance, but exhaustion crushed me. My eyelids drooped, hands stiff on the wheel. When I spotted a small turnoff into an empty patch of ground, I swerved in. The place was barren. No campfire remains, no trash, just mossy dirt and stone. I decided to sleep in the car, doors locked tight. The heat of vinyl mixed with damp forest air, thick and stifling. I forced myself to close my eyes, searching for a shred of calm. Near midnight, I jolted awake. Something outside. Footsteps, slow, heavy, snapping branches, crack, crack. I held my breath, eyes straining through the slit in the curtain. Moonlight spilled faintly, just enough to reveal a face. A man's face pressed against the window, eyes wide and vacant, skin pale. He stared directly at me, unblinking. I recoiled in terror, heart exploding in my chest. The face vanished, swallowed by shadow. Before I could catch my breath, another figure lunged from the opposite side. Bang! The rear window shattered, glass slicing my arm like fire. Cold air rushed in, carrying the stench of damp metallic earth. A hand groped inside, fumbling for the lock. Panicked, I scrambled to the driver's seat, fumbling the keys with shaking hands. He pounded the driver's side window, the crack of splintering glass chilling. The other man clawed at the rear latch, his arm bleeding from the jagged shards. Blood dripped onto the seat, the metallic stench flooding the car. My hands trembled so badly I nearly dropped the key, but finally the engine roared to life. Just as one hand popped the rear lock, I slammed the gas. The SUV shrieked forward. In the mirror, the forest swallowing everything. But I caught a glimpse, the black pickup truck lurking in the trees, half hidden, as if it had been waiting all along. I drove all night. The road had no end, only the endless reach of headlights into darkness. Cold sweat soaked my back, my hands gripping the wheel until my knuckles went white. Every glance at the mirror, I feared those twin headlights would reappear behind me. By dawn, I had to stop. The rear door hung loose, windows shattered, night wind cutting into me like knives. I stepped out to shut it when I noticed a trail of blood smeared across the gravel, leading from my car into the woods, as if one of them was still nearby. Shaking, I locked up and drove on. The sun rose, a weak golden light washing over the road, but inside me the fear thickened. I clung to the belief that if I just kept driving, I'd escape. But then, at a sharp bend along a cliffside, I saw it. The black pickup truck. Parked on the shoulder, silent. Windows dark. No. Figure revealed. My chest tightened. I floored the gas. Just as I passed, the window slid down. From the pitch-black interior I saw a smile. Thin lips, yellowed teeth, eyes hollow. After that, memory fragments blur. I recall only the roar of engines, then the brutal impact. Screech of metal, shattering glass, the howl of wind as my SUV careened off the road, plunging into the ravine. The last sensations, my body crushed under weight, the acrid sting of gasoline mixed with blood, then fire. When I awoke, I was still on the Alaska road, but not in flesh. My body had burned inside the mangled SUV. Only my soul lingers at that curve, where the black pickup still appears on lonely nights. Many drivers later swore, when they stopped to rest on the desolate stretch, their windows fogged with breath, as if someone stood outside watching. Some claimed they saw the black pickup tailing them, only for it to vanish without a trace when they looked again. I know the truth. It is no illusion, because I'm still here, bound to the Alaska highway, trailing every passing car. I stand right behind the driver's seat, whispering into their ears, but they never hear. They only shiver, blaming the night wind. My death did not come from demons. It came from men, flesh and blood men, who found joy in hunting lone travelers. They need no darkness to terrify. Their silence, their patience, and their cold smile behind tinted glass are enough to make them monsters. If one day you drive the Alaska highway, don't believe you are alone. Watch your rearview mirror. If you see a shadow silently tailing you, do not stop. Because when you stop, when your engine dies, I will slip into your back seat and tell you the rest of the story. Episode 4. The Cabin by Lake Michigan. I am Ashley Carter. They always say youth should have wild, reckless trips to remember. I believed that, and then one weekend getaway with friends turned me into a ghost, forever trapped in a rotting wooden cabin, where laughter still echoes in the daylight. But when night falls, only the predator's ragged breathing remains. That day, I drove with 3 friends, Tyler, Megan, and Josh, from Chicago to the outskirts near Lake Michigan. Online, we found a cheap cabin for rent. The photos made it look idyllic. Sloped roof, wide porch, right at the water's edge. Everyone was excited, imagining grilled dinners, cold beer, and moonlight glimmering across the lake. Josh's car carried us down winding roads blanketed with golden leaves. Autumn wind swept through the cracked windows, carrying the damp, earthy smell of the forest. When the cabin appeared, my heart skipped. Outside, it looked nothing like the photos. The wood was weathered, the porch eaten through with rot, windows fogged with condensation. The cabin stood silent, as though no one had lived there for years. Lake Michigan stretched out before it. Waters gray and sullen, waves slapping the shore in quick bursts. The briny stench of algae and moss stung my nose, prickling my skin. "Looks creepy," Megan shivered, pulling her jacket tight. "Even better for us," Tyler grinned, hauling out a case of beer. We set up food, played music, forced laughter to fill the quiet. But as dusk fell, the cabin changed. The yellow glow from the ceiling bulb flickered, stretching our shadows long across cracked wooden walls. The smell of smoke from the fireplace tangled with damp, decaying wood, forming a heavy, acrid stench. I sat curled on the sofa, feeling as though the cabin was staring back through its fogged windows. That night, we circled the table, grilling, drinking, laughing. Josh leaned in with a half-joking, half-serious story. "They say a girl once vanished here. Right in this cabin, her body was never found." Megan laughed loudly, trying to mask her shiver. But me, I felt a chill coil down my spine. Then, knock, knock. On the window behind me. Silence. Only the wind skimming across the lake. Only my heartbeat hammering. Tyler jumped up, pulled the curtain aside. Outside, darkness. Only broken strips of moonlight trembling on the water. "No one there," he muttered. "Must have been a branch," Josh said, though his voice quivered. We sat back down, pretending, but the air had shifted. Through a crack in the door drifted a smell, sharp, metallic, like rusted iron, mixed with the acrid tang of slow-burning wood. It dried my throat, made me swallow hard. That first night in the cabin, I learned. Not every sound comes from the wind, and not every foul stench comes from nature. Something was out there, pressed against the windows, listening to every laugh. The night dragged. We cleaned after our small party, but the laughter was gone. Only clattering spoons, only our footsteps creaking across the warped boards. Each sound echoed unnaturally, as though the cabin was mocking us. Around midnight, with Megan and Josh asleep, I sat by the window, staring out at the lake. The water was black, moonlight barely silvering the ripples. That's when I heard it. Steps. Heavy. Deliberate. On the porch. Thump, thump, thump. I froze. My bare feet numbed, sweat dampened my back. I held my breath, peeking through the curtain slit. A figure. Standing on the porch, facing the door, unmoving. A gray hood pulled over his head, the face completely hidden. My heart seized. I shook Tyler awake. He squinted out the window, but the figure was gone. He forced a laugh. "You're imagining things, too much beer." But the metallic stench was back, stronger, sharper. Around 2 a.m., the kitchen window shattered. Megan screamed. We rushed in, wind blasting through the broken frame, curtains whipping. Glass littered the floor, moonlight glinting like knives. Josh snatched a burning log from the fireplace, eyes darting. Someone's inside. And then footsteps upstairs, slow, deliberate. The boards creaked with every tread, heavy and mocking. Megan sobbed. Tyler grabbed a flashlight, whispered, "Lock the doors." "Stay here." Then he climbed the stairs. The beam shook across the walls. I clutched Megan tightly, nausea rising from the acrid smoke mixed with iron stench. A crack sounded, then silence. "Tyler?" Josh called, voice breaking. No answer. Only seconds later, the sound I'll never forget, even in death, something dragging, heavy. Then a sickening thud. A body hitting the floor. Tyler. A rope cinched around his neck, his face swollen purple, eyes bulging. Megan screamed. Josh swung the burning log wildly, but from the stairwell's darkness a figure emerged. Hood pulled low. Silent. Moving with deliberate steps, eyes hidden. The moonlight struck his hand, holding a knife. Long, cold steel gleaming. I couldn't breathe. My body shrank into itself, trembling. That night, the cabin became a trap, and we, the prey. I remember my last moment vividly. The stench of blood filled the room, thick and nauseating, mixing with smoke. Megan's cries cracked into a broken wail. Josh shook, fire on the log dwindling into glowing embers. The hooded man descended, each footstep pounding the floor like a death clock. He stopped in the center of the room, tilting his head. The knife caught the moonlight, throwing a shard of ice into my eyes. Megan begged, voice shrill, "Please! We'll leave. We'll go." The knife fell. Blood sprayed across the wall. Her scream choked to gurgles. Then silence. Josh lunged, but the man twisted, driving the blade straight through his chest. The sound of steel grinding bone echoed, sickening. Josh's eyes widened, staring at me, but no words came, only death. And then I was alone. I backed into the corner, wood cold against my spine, sticky blood soaking my clothes. I groped for anything, only shards of glass. He approached. I smelled his breath through the hood, thick and metallic. The knife rose. My scream tore through the cabin, before everything drowned in black. When I opened my eyes, I was no longer flesh. I stood on the porch, staring through fogged windows. Inside, no blood, no bodies. Only a hollow, empty room. But I knew it was all still there, swallowed, hidden by the cabin. Every night I hear the footsteps. Sometimes him, sometimes the others, souls like me, caught and silenced. None of us can leave. We wander, circling, waiting for the next guests. I try to warn them. I knock on windows, whisper through the cracks. But they only hear the wind, only see warped wood. They laugh, dismissing it as campfire tales, until the glass shatters again, until the steps creak on the porch, and I can only watch the tragedy repeat. Now I understand. The cabin is not haunted. It is a snare. The terror does not come from ghosts. It comes from men, hooded men stepping silently, leaving blood behind, then vanishing as if nothing happened. So, if you ever find a cheap cabin by Lake Michigan, with lights still on, fresh footprints on the porch, do not rent it. Because when night falls, when you laugh around the wooden table, you will hear thump, thump on the porch. And when you turn back, you may see me, pale, hollow-eyed, whispering through the window, "Run," before it's too late. Episode 5, The Town Without a Map. My name is Michael Turner. I used to be a drifter, never staying in one place too long. I loved long drives across state lines, pulling into small towns barely mentioned on maps, just to see the empty streets, the old churches, the roadside diners. But one night I drove too far, and ended up in a place that should not exist. A town not on any map, not in anyone's memory but mine. And that town devoured my soul. That night, I was driving from Ohio to Wisconsin. A light rain drizzled, the windshield foggy, wipers screeching with every swipe. The highway was empty, fields on both sides drowned in darkness. The smell of hot rubber from the tires mixed with the damp earth, filling the car. It was past midnight when I saw a faint light ahead. At first, I thought it was just a gas station, but as I approached, the glow stretched wider, shaping into rows of houses. Yellow street lamps shone down on the wet pavement, gleaming like diluted streaks of blood. I slowed down and pulled in. The town appeared suddenly. Weathered wooden houses, low porches, mossy roofs. Windows lit, every one of them, but not a single person in sight. No car engines, no barking dogs, not even the wind. Just silence, thick and suffocating. I parked in front of a roadside diner. The neon sign flickered red. Open. I pushed the door. The bell above it jingled softly. The smell of old grease and burnt coffee clung to the air. Tables neatly set, mugs of coffee still steaming on the counter, as if someone had just poured them. But there were no customers, no waitresses, no one. I sat down, listening. Only the wall clock ticked, each beat boring into my skull. I shivered, sure eyes were watching me from the windows behind. I glanced outside, streets deserted. Yet I saw curtains twitch. For a split second I knew. Someone was standing behind them. I whispered to myself, "Hello? Where am I?" The only reply was silence, heavy as lead pressing on my chest. Panicked, I rushed back to the car, planning to leave. But as I drove through the main road, something made my hands tremble. No matter which way I turned, the streets always led me back to the same intersection, beneath the flickering yellow lamppost. The same still houses, the same lit windows, with no people. I had entered a circle, and the town refused to let me go. I drove in loops again and again, always returning to that same crossroads. The rain had stopped, but the pavement remained wet, reflecting light like puddles of blood. I cut the engine, parked in the middle of the intersection. The silence pressed in, so deep I could hear my pulse and the ticking of my wristwatch. I stepped out, the soles of my shoes soaked instantly in the wet asphalt. The smell rising from the ground was sharp, metallic, almost like a crypt. Then, from the far end of the street, came a sound, click, click, like an old bicycle wheel. Out of the shadows, a bicycle rolled forward, slowly. No rider on the seat. The handlebars turned by themselves, wheels splashing water that glittered like shards of glass. It drifted past me, then vanished into the darkness beyond. Goosebumps prickled my arms. I turned back toward the car, then froze. Behind the glowing windows, figures had appeared. Dozens of them. Still silhouettes, heads tilted, eyes fixed outward. They didn't move. They didn't blink. My throat went dry, a bitter taste coating my tongue. I shouted, "Who are you people? What is this place?" No answer. Only, at once, every curtain snapped shut, leaving the windows glowing hollow and empty. The silence returned. Shaking, I crawled back into the car, locking the doors tight. My hand touched the key, and the radio switched on by itself. Static hissed. Then a woman's voice whispered through, "You're here now. Stay with us." The voice fractured, overlapping itself, broken but unmistakable. I tried to switch it off. It kept going, louder, drowning out my panicked breathing. I slammed my fist against the dashboard. Finally, the radio went dead. At that instant, the passenger side window fogged over. Breath. Someone was pressed against it. I turned my head slowly. Through the misted glass, a pale face emerged. Skin white as chalk, lips tinged blue, eyes sunk black. It stared at me, unblinking. I screamed, started the engine, slammed the gas. Tires screeched. The car tore down the street. I twisted through turn after turn, only to find myself back at the intersection. The flickering lamppost still burned, but this time they had come outside. Figures stood lining the road, dozens, hundreds, unmoving, watching me. The breeze carried a stench, moldy fabric, rusted metal, and something sickly sweet like rotting fruit. I understood then I wasn't lost. I was captured. The townsfolk weren't human anymore. They stood in their ragged clothes from decades past, still as statues, but their gazes pierced like icy knives. My heart pounded. The sweet, rancid smell seeped through the car, clawing at my stomach. I floored the gas, tried to push through, but halfway down the street the engine sputtered and died. The dashboard glowed red. The wheel locked stiff. No matter how I turned the key, the car was dead. The windshield misted white. Then hands pressed against it. Dozens of prints, long fingers smearing across the glass, overlapping, choking out the view. A knock tapped against the driver's window. Tock, tock, tock. I turned my head. A face leaned against the glass, skin cracked, eyes hollow pits, lips twitching. Its voice didn't pass through the glass. It bloomed straight inside my skull. "You found us. Now you belong here." The door clicked open. A hand, freezing cold, clamped onto my wrist and yanked hard. I screamed, but the sound strangled as the stench of rot flooded my lungs. Shadows swarmed in, faces blank but ravenous. The cold dragged me under. I felt myself ripped from my body, saw it thrash once, then slump lifeless in the driver's seat. The lamppost flickered and went black. Now I stand here, forever, at the crossroads of the nameless town. I don't know where it exists on the map. Perhaps nowhere at all. But night after night lost travelers wander in. They see the glow ahead. They think they've found a refuge. I try to warn them. I tap their windows. I whisper through their radios. But no one listens. By the time they understand, it's too late. They too are surrounded by the residents. What are we? Not ghosts, not living. Just souls trapped, woven into the fabric of this town. The town swallows everything, turns us into its own. If you're ever driving a lonely road, rain falling past midnight, and you glimpse a faint yellow light up ahead, do not stop, do not turn in, because if you do, I'll see you. I'll be waiting at the roadside, hand raised in greeting, and from that moment, you'll never leave.